the tools that you need to navigate a world where people that you work with and live with and love are going to be different from you, by definition. You need to know that you're working with someone and you're not getting the reaction that you expect. What do? You say, oh my gosh, that person's really stupid. I just gave the greatest lecture, and they're not even clapping. No. You have to say, excuse me, did I say something offensive? You stop and you ask. You say, oh, well, Professor, you just made a homophobic remark, and I'm gay, and it just really hurt me when you said it. Okay, then it opens up a dialogue where you can bring that person into the classroom or into the work environment or wherever you are. It's very, very important that we have that humility, we have that strength, and we have that knowledge to allow ourselves to bring other people together. Because really, the roots of a lot of this was Islamophobia, the anti-black prejudice, the anti-Asian prejudice. A lot of these started with ignorance, but it wasn't just willy-nilly ignorance. Professor Wong was talking about some of the structural issues, and that's what we study in Asian American Studies and some of these other programs. We have to look at not just the docility and the ignorance, which is certainly there. There's also fear and false scarcity that is brought about. And this is where, if you read Naomi Klein, there's a number of other political theorists out there who are talking about false scarcity that's created. If I were to say to you, guess what? The really smart people here are Nigerian. And I noticed there are 3 Nigerians in the class, so therefore all the A's are going to go to them. Oh my gosh, why I'm in a class with all these Nigerians? Well, that's literally what was happening back in the 70s. A lot of the Asians were coming in, and they were getting jobs at Bell Laboratories and other places, and going to top schools. And so people started saying it must be true about this model minority male. Professor Wong laid out some of the discussion about exactly how it came about and what currently is doing, but it had a root in that people.
When we start thinking about why would they want to change or why would they want to negotiate with us, that's when we start moving towards what we need to do, what we need to build. Posing for the picture. What change, or actually in any given campaign or any given thing that we want to win, 4 questions that I want you all to walk away remember. What change do we want? Who has the resources to create that change? What do they want? And then what do we have that they want? Yeah. I'll write it up in a little bit. What change do we want? Who has the resources to create that change? What do they want? And then what do we have that they want? And I also like to see that there's 4 types of power, right? There's electoral, meaning there's the ability to impact the candidate's campaign. There's consumer. Can anyone give me a consumer example? Consumer power example?
American birth forecast?
True.
That's what I was going to say, boycotts, the whole media aspect.
Yeah. The grape strike and gelato. Yeah, so there's that. And then there's also the legal and regulatory. And my definition of that is like the ability to enforce the laws and regulations that are already like in place. And so one way that we are able to do that in the immigrant rights movement is being able to advocate and fight like our friends and families and loved ones' deportation cases. We're able to use memorandums that have already been set in place by the Department of Homeland Security institution functioning. So whether it's sitting in at a member of Congress's office or a senator's office, or whether it's stopping a deportation bus that's coming out of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility. Those are all things that you will be able to see. You have seen immigrant rights movement if you look it up. And you know, a lot of different movements are using it to this date. The movement for Black Lives, you see them shutting down those streets. And you know, some people may disagree with me and say that, oh, it's causing traffic or blah, 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 people aren't able to work. But knowing that that is a power that they have and that they're using, I think sometimes needs to be respected. So yeah, with that being said, one resource that has helped me out a lot as well is the Midwest Academy Strategy Chart. By a show of hands, I'm going to backtrack a lot. By a show of hands, who here organizes or like is part of a group that is
And saying, this is an issue I really care about. I want you to, I would like you to vote. If there's a bill that's coming up, I would like you to vote this way, or to make calls, Okay, great. Are there any other, some other questions?
I think one of the other big things that's preventing people from participating or putting their acts towards acts like these is like activist stigma. The idea that being
Sure.
activist means a lot of things that aren't always positive, and activists are always.
And I went to, I went to a school that was very politically apathetic, but I also went to a school that was I went to school in Pennsylvania, Lehigh University. So coming from Hawaii, I was not used to being, oftentimes I was the only minority, only person of color in a classroom. And schools predominantly, it's much more diverse now, but when I was there, it was predominantly white, upper class. So it was a very specific kind of demographic makeup of the student population. So I didn't feel like I could be overly vocal because I felt like the views of a lot of my peers were very different from my own experience growing up. And I didn't, feel the need to be, like you said, I didn't want to be seen as like an activist or this radical person who was like, talking about all of this stuff about race and, poverty and socioeconomic inequality. And I didn't, I in retrospect, I kind of wish that I had had the courage to be able to speak up more. And I think, that stigma, unfortunately, I agree, we need to do more to combat it. But I think we need to also empower our youth to realize that it's not a bad thing to be labeled as an activist or as someone who's, active and, even an organizer. I think that title itself also sometimes has a negative stigma. But you shouldn't be afraid of those titles because I think personally that as an activist or as an organizer, what you're doing is helping to impact change in whether it's in your college campus, in your community, or in the world more broadly, in our country, or in and impacting policies that directly affect all of us. So again, a small number when you consider that there are 435 members of Congress in the House and another 100 senators, right? So 13 by themselves don't really, even if they all come together and say, we don't like this, it's not enough in terms of numbers. What I didn't mention earlier is that we often work, so I mentioned the Black and Hispanic caucuses. So what we often do is we team up as what we call a tri-caucus. So it's CAPAC, the Black Caucus, and Hispanic Caucus. And what we often do is we will, work together as a coalition